What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn of the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at Will Pod11 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Will Parkinson NFL on YouTube. Another episode, been a nice little week break here. Let everyone cool off after like 7 episodes in 3 days during the NFL draft. The Jets did draft an offensive lineman. People are pissed that Brock Bowers is not a Jet. Some people are happy they got Olu. Some people are pissed at both of these situations. There's been a lot of takes that have flown around my timeline the last week, so I had to let them fester a little bit. No better person to hop on. Danny Heifetz, the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Danny, how we doing? Feel like you back to yourself yet post draft?
Yeah, man, I'm reborn. Already looking at 2024. We're getting the schedule next week. It's just like right into the next one, man.
Yeah, never ending. We'll have a schedule episode next week. Don't worry. We'll do a win loss game with games that are 5 months out. But I wanted to put a final bow on the Jets 2024 NFL draft, and I kind of joked about it there, but going into throughout the process, it kind of felt like down in Mobile, it was offensive line. Get to Indy, and it was like Brock Bowers, our offensive line. And then we get to owners' meetings, and it's like wide receiver, or do they do something stupid and go defense? Like, it just, everything had changed so much throughout the process. And we fall back to Olu Fashanu, who I felt like personally, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Jets fans would have been twerking for Olu back in February. No, he was never going to fall to the Jets. And then like the excitement on draft night, I think probably because there was those Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors trade up rumors. I feel like everyone's like, oh, great, offensive line. What'd you make of round one for the Jets? And we can dive in a little bit deeper.
So as to the temperature and mood of Jets fans, I mean, happiness is reality minus expectations. And when the expectations are the receivers, and then there's no receivers, like, yeah, people aren't going to be happy, because I think that's just kind of, I never understood the Brock Bowers stuff. The receivers make sense. Neighbors were so highly graded. Odunze, I think, is going to be a star. I understand why a team would go with those guys. Brock Bowers never made sense to me, because I feel like Brock Bowers was going to be the straw that broke the camel for Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh getting fired, frankly. Like, I mean, if you just look at any pass catcher was kind of like left a curveball. Aaron Rodgers has never integrated a rookie receiver into the offense. Now, some people would say maybe because he hasn't had a great rookie receiver, but the reality is, all right, fine, Rodgers will integrate a rookie pass catcher for the first time ever. And frankly, doesn't seem like a guy who's big on change at this point in his life. Seems more like a double, triple, quadruple down guy. But then Brock Bowers, you're like simultaneously saying, not only will Brock Bowers be a special enough tight end to buck the trend of almost tight ends almost never producing immediately, but Aaron Rodgers will trust Brock Bowers immediately. If Brock Bowers wasn't integrated into the Jets offense by week 6, like, Robert Saleh's done. And so I never really understood. I think we all understand they're in this weird holding pattern. Can I hijack for a second? I have a question for you.
I love when people do this, because I do this to everybody else on the show. I'm like, can I host for a minute?
I would like to host. So I look at the Jets, and I want you to explain to me, if you had like a financial manager who managed, let's just say media paid enough, money to have us all have our, lovely Woody Johnson level stocks, and you got your Woody Johnson money, and you look at your financial manager and you're like, if you don't give me a 14% return this year, you're fired. Is that a good idea? Like, no, like, you'd be looking and be like, this guy's going to be in Bitcoin or whatever. And then if it doesn't go up, whatever, who cares? It's not his money. Why are the Jets doing this again with the team? Because you saw Mike Maccagnan, which, my God, that was 6 years ago at this point. But Mike Maccagnan got basically an ultimatum in 2018, hands out the most guaranteed money I think ever. No team had ever handed out $100 million of guarantees in one offseason. That was Le'Veon Bell year. And now I just look at this team and I'm like, okay, they're doubling down on Rodgers. Robert Saleh knows he's going to get fired. Joe Douglas knows they're going to get fired. Do you think that this is a good plan where these guys, Saleh, Douglas, know they're going to get fired or they don't make the playoffs, and so they're like, screw it. Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, 2 33-year-old tackles. It's smart to get Fashanu. Mike Williams. Like, do you like this plan of everyone just knows they're done if they don't make it?
So it's a good question. I like a majority of the moves they've made this offseason. I like the Moses move because I felt like it was basically for nothing. He's a guy he's been durable every year until last year, and even then he still played. And if he sucks, he's gone. He's a $5 million deal. The Simpson deal, same thing. 1 year in Baltimore after being pretty ass the 2 years before. But hey, if he's your worst offensive lineman, you'll figure it out. I think hey, we're counting on AVT and Tippmann to come back. I'm just kind of working through the offensive line. The Tyron move to me on its own was the highest high floor and the lowest low floor because,
yeah.
right, if it works, great. And he's like, you have an all-pro tackle next year. And if it doesn't work, whatever, he's gone in a year, but probably screwed. That's why the draft pick made so much sense. Receiver, there's still a body short to me. That's why, I think that's the one spot where I don't know what you can really add now. There's the sneaky third round pick they got from the Lions next year. Is that now they have 2 3s? Is that, I know this is never going to die, but when the Raiders inevitably suck and they're 2-5 and Devontae Adams is pissed off, and does that come back up? So Mike Williams, again, a lot of one-year moves, which to me at least most of them could work. And if they don't work, at least you're resetting. I think the bigger concern was always with Robert Saleh. And we were both down in Mobile and the story drops and it was like, is Mike Vrabel going to be the Jets head coach? Because if that's the conversation, it's a different story, right? I don't think there's really many doubts about this Jets team. We're going, this is a playoff proven coach with a roster that with any quarterback that had a brain cell last year is probably be in the playoffs. So I think the bigger question was around you keeping Douglas, and he hasn't mortgaged the farm too much, which is, I think, the one positive. They're risky moves, I guess, but they're at least 1-year options. If they were starting to give out 2-3-year deals to these guys, I'd be fully on the same page. I'd be like, what are you doing? This is bad. But I think they're saying last year happened because Rodgers gets hurt. And if he doesn't get hurt, they're 10-7, not 7-10. And we're all excited about these moves because we're like, oh, yeah. Tyron Smith as opposed to Mekhi Becton, huge win. This team's now a 12-win team. I just think it's so hard because, and I'll flip this back to you, but it's so hard to know with the Jets because last year was 4 plays, obviously, and then they go and beat the Bills. They beat the Eagles last year and all this stuff. And there's the one drive from Rodgers against the Giants in the preseason. You're like, oh, this team might be awesome. And then there's moments where they lose 30-0 against Miami, and you're like, what is this team? Why did you just totally quit? You know what I mean? It's weird.
All right. Well, I'll answer. I'll answer that question with another question, which is, I want you to pretend like I'm 5 years old, and I actually have a belief system behind this. But
it's usually a good way to think, honestly.
Why do Jets fans want or blame Robert Saleh instead of Joe Douglas?
I think the media part's a huge thing. I think that Saleh's in your face. I have this question all the time because it's blowing my mind. Robert Saleh made them from the worst defense into he's a defensive guy. He's developed all these guys. They went from the worst to the best defense. I think the biggest thing with Joe Douglas and where I think he gets the most support is whether people like it or not, he's got really powerful friends in NFL media, people that lead draft coverage at both networks. That are really well respected. And when they talk so positively about Joe Douglas, it's hard if you're a fan and you're not in the weeds every day, I think you're thinking this guy that, is the number one draft analyst at multiple networks or different guys talking so positively about him. And they're saying Zach isn't the problem. And they're saying these picks are really good. It must be the coach's fault. And I just think Saleh talks every day. And sometimes he looks depressed or he's got a different beard and he's got all this stuff. And Douglas doesn't say anything. Yeah. So he's kind of you know what I mean? I just think he stays out of the negative stuff, and Saleh just is hit me with it, and it's he gets blamed. It's Aaron Boone, Brian Cashman with less proven.
Yo, I like that. I like that a lot. Except that's a really good.
I can't stand Boone either, so it's a little different. But
that's really interesting. That's so funny you say that because I'd always describe the Eagles as Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, as Brian Cashman is Howie Roseman, and then Nick Sirianni is just this guy who's supposed to lead the locker room. But it's so funny you say that.
Weird stuff and
I have a very unpopular opinion, and I don't even, it's not an opinion as much as something I genuinely want to float to you, which is how I view this whole Jets situation. I think the Jets would be almost crazy to get rid of Robert Saleh because this is my view of the situation. I feel like the name is whoever. The person who needs to go is fill in the blank who did not get a backup quarterback, or at least once. I understand why they went into the season with Zach Wilson, Rodgers, and Tim Boyle. Once Rodgers goes down 3 minutes into the season, whoever decided that they would stick with Zach Wilson, that person needs to be under the microscope. I don't understand why the belief is that Robert Saleh decided that. Here's the way I view the situation. I could be wrong. I feel like Robert Saleh got informed by Woody Johnson Joe Douglas, whoever, we are sticking with the roster. And then Robert Saleh manned up and said, all right, cool. I will go to work and do my job. We're going to, and what did Robert Saleh do? There's a joke. Can I curse on this? There's a joke in The Wire that when you, like the mayor of Baltimore, but the mayor, congrats, you won the election. Cool. You get a bowl of shit you have to eat. Now, finish that. Cool. And now you got another bowl of shit you have to eat. That's leadership. Robert Saleh ate his bowls of shit. He went up every day and he defended Zach Wilson. He did what he had to do because he was told that's what he's doing. Now, what's Robert Saleh actually in control of? Not the offense. You got Nate Hackett's there because Aaron Rodgers. Do you think Robert Saleh was like, yeah, just take what? Robert Saleh's like, we're going to get Rodgers and Nate Hackett has to get hired. I don't think Robert Saleh wants Nate Hackett.
He hired his best friend's brother and they made him fire him because Zach Wilson didn't like him.
That's the thing, man. Look, it's just like, I look at all this. I see Nate Hackett being handed the offense. I don't think that's Robert Saleh's doing. What's Robert Saleh's doing? The defense, which the worst game of Jalen Hurts' career to that point in time. They beat the freaking Chiefs. I know Zach Wilson, play out of his body, out of his mind in that one. But I look at the Jets defense and I'm like, outside of the Cowboys game where they got destroyed in week 2, the Jets defense was freaking electric for the first 10 weeks of the season. And here's the thing about defense. It's mostly effort. So when I look at the defensive collapse, the Dolphins game, it's because they had given up. The players, because it was hopeless and it was sad and pathetic. But for 3 months, I see Robert Saleh somehow getting this group of dudes to be like an all-world championship caliber defense, easily the best Jets defense I've seen since Revis and Rex Ryan. And then on offense, he's dealing with an imperfect situation that wasn't his decision. So the idea that Robert Saleh's going to get fired, genuinely, what am I missing? Because I don't understand why he's the fall guy. He's the guy taking accountability. He's the only one taking accountability.
I would say that the two things that I think I've gotten on Saleh most about are, and one of these is totally not like a big deal at all in reality. And I kind of mentioned it before, just sometimes at these pressers, and again, they mean nothing. Like they literally could not mean any less.
They're what we see.
But they're what we see, and to fans and whatever, and you're trying to, people from Long Island driving an hour and 45 minutes to MetLife and all this different stuff. It's just sometimes it's like, dude, can you give me something? And I know he's done with the media and he's got a lot of story, he's had all these stories and he's done with it. And I get it. But sometimes I think it's just how you carry yourself down the sideline. It's like sometimes it's like you're this fiery guy, and I think that's what gets people fired up. And sometimes it's like a lot. And then other times things are going bad, and he kind of just sits there with that face, and you're like, come on, man, like give me something. I've got on him just because sometimes it's like your team's clearly quitting. They try to give even just for show. And then secondly, the only other thing I think I've kind of given him a hard time was, and it's kind of a similar thing, is just they've gotten beat up a lot at the back half of years. And I don't even know if it's necessarily just on him. I think the coaching staff as a whole, where you're like, hey, year one, I get it. The super young team, they were basically tanked. They basically, multiple first round picks year after year. You get it. But last year was like, dude, the back half of 2021 or 2022, and then back half of last year where it's like, I know the quarterback sucks. Like, I get it, and I get there's injuries, but like, give me a little more. Just like, I need a little bit more from you. But again, like, I think they both should have the opportunity, like, especially, I'd love to see Robert Saleh with an actual quarterback. I'd love to see, what does he actually look like as a head coach? And again, I know coaches are, we've been so blinded by Bill Belichick and, Kevin O'Connell and these guys where it's like, even as more recently, or Stefanski, where it's like, look what they got out of it. And it's like, yeah, but they're offensive guys that like, they should be getting something out of Josh Dobbs for 3 games. Like Saleh's not going to, and Nate Hackett aren't going to get that. So I'm on the same page as you. I don't think Joe Douglas took enough heat. I think he's had a good offseason this year where I don't think he's overpaid, and thrown too much. He's thrown a lot of money down the line. They have a lot of dead money, and it's, I'm not a huge fan of what happened with JFM. I've talked about Bryce Huff a million times. There's been some things. If they don't extend Michael Carter this offseason, I'm going to definitely lay some juice there, because I think it's like you got to stop letting these young homegrown guys get out of the building or go to other better organizations. Like, I'm really happy with Hassan Reddick. Extend him or like do something here, because the deal is good. And then if he walks in a year, it's not worth a comp pick. And then not having Bryce Huff still. The McDonald pick is the one pick I will give them both a ton of shit for. I have no idea why that happened. That was we didn't know what our plan was when Belichick screwed us with that pick.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I don't want to beat up. I know it's been a tough look, I'm a Giants fan. Like neither of us have had a great run.
Nah, this decade sucked.
The football's better when the Jets are good. Like as much as the Jets are a punching bag. Like when the Jets are, it's like the Knicks right now. It's like the NBA is so much better when the Knicks are fun. The NFL's better when the Jets are good, and maybe it's hard to remember that, but like it's true. And so I don't know.
I talk about this all the time.
Like
look at NFL Network, ESPN, NBC. They're like all former Jets from those playoff teams. And they didn't even win a title, and it's literally just all Jets. It's D Wood and it's Rex and it's Bart Scott and I'm missing a million people here. There's a million guys. Like they're all and Mike Tannenbaum and all these dudes like the coach, the really GM, and
Mike Greenberg's just the GM for ESPN. He's the Jets ESPN Connect.
Greeny's not a huge fan. I don't think he's a lot of fans amongst Jets fans, but that's a topic for another day. But obviously, Malachi Corley, right? The Jets, pretty much it felt like Rome Odunze was going to be a Rodgers pick in terms of, hey, go get me a weapon. He's literally still never had a first-round receiver, and he likely will never have had, which is nuts, in a lot of senses, and you do get the frustration from time to time. Do I think a lot of times it's a little overblown? Yes, but again, and the Packers have drafted well, but I get the frustration. You mentioned it before, integrating rookie receivers, tight ends. Malachi Corley feels like a guy who's easy to integrate just because of a lot of short yardage stuff, get the ball to your hands quickly. Rodgers, as has gone on, has done a really good job. And, Daniel Jeremiah, I think, mentioned he could be that Randall Cobb level player where not 2022 Randall Cobb, like we're talking 2014, 2015, 2011 Randall Cobb, pre 600 touches. But
BC.
What do you think of the Corley pick? Did you like it? I know some people don't love it just because it's like, he still isn't maybe necessarily as advanced a receiver as some of the other guys that went around that range.
Yeah, I would be I like him. I would be lying if I told you I get excited when a team drafts a guy and then they come out and start talking about how we'll like manufacture ways to get him the ball, and I'm like, that sounds like you can't get him the ball normal ways. You have to, if you have to build something boutique or bespoke to get him the ball, honestly, that's not great. And that's kind of how I look at it.
It's a little scary.
And again, I also think that sometimes it's like it comes down a lot of times for me, like, what's your vision for the player? And I think that sometimes we forget it's not draft, it's draft and develop, right? And has to be like the Raven teams, like the Ravens draft so well, the Patriots did for the first 12 years of Belichick, is there has to be a real synapse connection with the coaching staff of what's the vision for the player, is everyone on board? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Does is Nate Hackett still running the offense?
I mean, it seems like Rodgers the OC, and Corley's Hackett's the assistant OC.
I don't want to call him a puppet, but the reality is that I look at Nate Hackett and I'm like, he's a bobblehead. What was his claim? If you look at the claims to fame, unfortunately, and so I look at Nate Hackett and I'm like, do we trust the vision for getting Corley involved? I don't see why there should be any faith. And I hate to say this. I hate to be pessimistic. It's not fun. It's much more fun to come on the show and say, I'm in love. It's not my issue with Malachi Corley. The issue is I really don't have any faith in Nate Hackett to be the person to have the correct vision for this player. And unfortunately, we're in an ecosystem where if a receiver doesn't take off in the first couple of years, it's very hard to get back on track. You see Jerry Jeudy, you look at tons, not that he's the same player, but in reality, Nico Collins last year for Houston is the first player that did nothing in his first 2 seasons and then exploded in like years. It really doesn't happen if you make it 2 years. And my fear for Corley is that I kind of doubt that there's he's ranked on a board, but I don't think there's a vision on how to use him. It just sounds good in a press conference, but yeah. I'd be kind of surprised if there's like a larger idea.
Yeah. No, look, I think the one thing that the Jets do this a lot, and I will be positive the rest of the show, I promise, but they love to do this like, hey, he was the 4th receiver on our board. And while that may be true, I actually almost think it doesn't actually make you look as good as you think it does. It's like, why was he the 4th receiver on your board when he was with the 12th or 13th guy to go? It's like, either you're going to be super right or you're going to be super wrong. I just think it almost puts you in like this weird situation where, maybe you have your Puka situation where the Rams are like, hey, he was our 6th rated receiver and he was the 20th guy drafted and you look awesome. But then there's also the situation where he could be the opposite. I think Corley's going to be good. I think he's going to be a fun player. My biggest nervousness, and Connor and Joe talked about this on the other show, I do not need him week 1 to be like getting 8 to 9 targets, because maybe he's awesome and maybe he'll be amazing week 1 and we have no idea. But it's just, I feel like if he's your third or fourth option as a receiver, you're like, all right, cool. We can work him along slowly.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, we're figuring out what he works best at. I just hope he doesn't have this, because Mike Williams coming off an ACL and maybe he's ready week 1, maybe he's not. And Mike Williams is a guy who is always hurt but always plays. And, he's all effort and like the lead athlete. And I don't really have a worry about Mike Williams not being fine. I just would like to see like his minimal Lazard, Brownlee, Gibson, especially early on in the year.
I actually think Lazard is going to go down as one of the worst contracts in the 21st century.
He might. Aaron, how much money do you think he owes Rodgers? Like he should owe Rodgers for that deal.
He
75%.
Rapper on a first record label contract. Like I don't know what the better question is, what does Lazard deserve to keep? He got, you know what Lazard is? Because he's the biggest receiver in the NFL. He's the guy who stands behind the bad guy in a movie. Like, like Harry Potter or whatever, like Malfoy standing there, but like Krabs and Goyle are behind. Like he's like the tough standing behind him who has no lines. Like Lazard is just there. Being a healthy scratch down the stretch was, for a $44 million, $11 million a year, was pathetic. But to your point, I think Corley could be really good. I just look at a guy like Roman Wilson that went, 87th? I'm looking at 84th to the Steelers, 15 picks later. And I'm like, I love Roman Wilson. But at the same time, Corley could be good. I also, do you want to, we could be optimistic too.
Yeah. Let's be optimistic. It's May. People are going to keep being negative.
This is raining on your parade. Sorry. Let's give some May flowers then. With all that said, I think Robert Saleh is a really good coach, and winning fixes all this shit. And so that's the thing I want to say. Like, I don't love the Corley pick, but also I don't hate it either. But what I'm saying about Saleh is he's a good coach. Everyone should be excited. And if Rodgers is actually healthy, I think the Jets could very easily start like 7-2. We'll see what the actual specifics of the schedule are.
We'll clip this one.
Yeah. And I'm like, the point being, this is a really good, talented team. And this is probably the best defense that Aaron Rodgers has had in like 8 years. And so you look at the Patriots, where the Patriots are starting not a 1. The Patriots are in like a 2-year rebuild minimum. I don't think the Patriots are going to be competitive until probably the middle of next year. I don't like what the Dolphins are doing. The Dolphins are low key, like they're kind of living a high and fast life, but I don't think the Dolphins have the goods in the middle of either.
That bender
line.
might come to an end soon.
Yeah, it's a bender. That's exactly. It's a Miami bender, and they have all the speed and
they've been in spring break for 3 weeks, and they're like, we still got it.
It's like they've been in Miami since Thursday night, but it's like Tuesday morning, and it's like they haven't eaten in 3 days. And so I don't think that they have the goods on either side of the line in the middle to compete. And then you look at Buffalo. Buffalo just reset for like the next half decade. Like the Buffalo is in a total transition. There's a reason they're taking a future second for Stephon Diggs. Like this is a reset. The Buffalo is still the favorite to win the division and should be, but there is no reason the Jets should not be competing outside of Rodgers' health. And obviously, we'll see, 40-year-old off an Achilles. But dude, if Rodgers is playing, the original reason this all worked, I still come back to, which is the 2020, what year is it? 2022, that Vikings game where the Jets went like 0 for 5 in the red zone. You know what? You don't need 100% healthy Aaron Rodgers to win that game. You don't. You need like 6. You need Aaron Rodgers' brain. That's all you need. And that's where like Garrett Wilson, I would pair that with the Garrett Wilson play that won the game in week 1, where he frankly like intercepted the pass, right? Zach Wilson threw an interception.
Oh, it was a horrible throw. Yeah, let's not make a mistake.
Zach Wilson threw the ball to the cornerback. I forget who it was. And Garrett Wilson, functionally speaking, intercepted the ball.
Basically, Trey White's last moment as a Bill.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers' brain and the Jets defense, I kind of think the Jets could easily win 11 games to make the playoffs and be competitive. It's not on the schedule people thought. It's on the timeline. But I do think there's absolutely a chance for a Brett Favre 2008 like flash of brilliance here, and we'll see how long it lasts. And so I think that this will, in a very strange roundabout way, probably be the best football Jets fans have seen for 10 years.
Yeah, I go through this question a lot, and I remember posing this question to people on the pod last year, and I remember I think it was I want to say it was Field Yates. It was like, hey, like, is the division round, this is going to 23, like a success? And I was like, I think getting in the playoffs and maybe winning a playoff game is a success. I think it's the minimum this year. I think you have to get the divisional round. I don't think anyone's getting extended. I doubt if they go and make the wild card round, they lose 30-13 to the Ravens. Like Rodgers is probably not coming back. I think Rodgers, for what it's worth, and this is just my opinion, but he said a lot of things that make me think he's pretty obsessed with playing until he's 45. And the 3 or 4 more years, he's changed his body. He's gone to a new team. He's now going to practices. He's out of his shell more. He talks a lot more, whether you like it or not.
I didn't know.
Whether you like it or not, like if you notice, like it's a lot of what Brady started doing, a lot more on social media. It's a lot of post-football stuff. And Brady was fucking awesome in Tampa Bay, and he was pretty awful the last 2 years. And we can say all we want, by the way, about Belichick and all this stuff. Brady was not good at the end in New England. There was no support. Everything was going to shit. But, like, he also was not good. That Titans game, like, we don't talk about it. Like, pick 6 last forever in Foxborough for playing for the Patriots. Like, pretty bad. Logan Ryan, Giants legend. Almost a Jet legend as well. Shout out Nate Schmidt for that botched per source. But, you know, what a beast. In terms of obviously you do a fantasy show, and Breece Hall is a guy who, I said this a month ago, and I actually feel better about it now with the addition of the Fashanu pick. If Breece Hall won Offensive Player of the Year in the AFC, would you be shocked? Because I don't think I would. Last year's 1,500 scrimmage yards with the worst offensive line in football, and Zach Wilson at quarterback. If you put Rodgers and an offensive line that should be on paper much better and a great defense, like he should probably have close to 2,000 yards from scrimmage. And we're going to be talking about the RB1 in fantasy, RB2 maybe, at worst.
He's like the consensus number 2 running back. I have him at 3.
It's him and McCaffrey, right?
Yeah, McCaffrey's number 1 because McCaffrey's number 1, and it got to like minus 400 from the score time. Remember when Kyle Shanahan put McCaffrey in a game?
Yeah, Sam Darnold's playing quarterback against Jacksonville, maybe.
Yeah, just to score a touchdown because he had a streak. So it's like when that
happens, I was like, dude, fuck that. Let's say I'm gonna touchdown, bro. Come on.
This is why you can't win a Super Bowl, because you like, what are you doing, Kyle? Anyway, McCaffrey's number 1. Everyone has Breece number 2. I have him 3, but like it's the same thing. It's like Bijan, Breece, whatever. But like he's consensus the number 2 running back in fantasy football. And at McCaffrey's age, dude, I would not blink for a second if you told me that Garrett Wilson led the league in receiving yards and Breece Hall led the league in rushing yards. Like I wouldn't blink. And I know that sounds like kind of a fever dream, but the reality is that Aaron Rodgers has never had like, you know, Mike Williams is best number 2 Aaron Rodgers has had in years, realistically. Like Rodgers operated with Devontae Adams as a number 1 and like 5 guys that were number 4 for like 6 years. And so I look at the Jets receiving
the Jets number 2 from last year.
I would not blink if Garrett Wilson had 175 targets this year. And you combine that with the Breece expectations, I genuinely think like there's a world where like if Rodgers were to keep playing, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson could be like 2 top 3 fantasy picks in 2025.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy to think about because the Jets have for so long been defense has either skated by or been really good, obviously, and the offense has been an issue for such a long time. It's you almost have to pinch yourself sometimes with some of these, and you know, and it's the lack of hospital balls. I think we watched the Vegas game last year. Garrett Wilson had some awesome plays. He had some drops last year against Vegas, and you're like, damn, but it's like he's getting popped like 90s football every single time because it's like he's having to do everything. And one other guy in that offense I wanted to ask you about. They obviously didn't draft Bowers, which benefits Tyler Conklin immensely. He's in a contract year. He's 600, I think 60 and 600 last year. He's a guy tight end wise. You feel like probably ends up similar 60 and 600, but probably throws in like 6 to 8 touchdowns where like he's a guy every week where you're like, he's going to get 3 or get 4 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown. And like,
there's nothing wrong with 60 and 600. If you're
there's not.
I think Conklin's good, man. Like at the end of the day, he can block, he can catch. He's not like immobile with the ball, and he's good in the red zone. And like I actually think Tyler Conklin has like big Bob Tonyan, who actually is a free agent. I wouldn't be surprised if you guys signed, but like Tyler Conklin, Bob Tonyan for the Packers randomly had like 11 touchdowns one year. Tyler Conklin's better than him. And
100%.
And so I look at Conklin. I would not at all be surprised if he was second on the team. Total touchdowns if it was like Breece, Garrett, and then Conklin. I actually think I would expect it to roll that way, honestly, because I think Conklin. I think he's the quote-unquote weak point on the team just because there hasn't been a cool, sexy upgrade there. And you got, like, even Tyron Smith. It's like even your tackles you're adding between him and Fashion, who are like sexy left tackles. But actually, Tyler Conklin's if Tyler Conklin's the worst player in your offense, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, I was gonna say like could be in a lot worse situations. I want to ask you. We talked about the AFC East a little bit. You know, the AFC as a whole is one of those. Last year was everyone's going to be amazing, and most teams kind of weren't that good. A lot of quarterback injuries, Jets, Bengals, Browns for injuries plus other stuff. You know, a million different kind of things happen. Chiefs, you know, draft Xavier Worthy. They've come off the title. They're also have got their best receiver outside of Travis Kelce. You know, doing a lot of really dumb stuff this offseason. Again, I don't know all the details, but it seems not great. Whether how much he gets suspended, we'll see. The Bengals, you know, either what happens with T. Higgins here. Burrow kind of gets hurt every year now, it's starting to feel like, and it's kind of the injuries don't get better. Baltimore's lost a lot. I know they had a nice draft. I know they've added some pieces, but lost a lot of guys. Like, I think what no one really talks about, but they're a great organization, right? This is what happened. Pittsburgh, I still think, has huge problems at quarterback, and I don't really know why we just assume Justin Fields, who's been awful, and Russell Wilson, who's been probably even worse, suddenly going to become good. I know they had a great draft again, but we'll see. Where's this Jets team? You mentioned it there, right? You wouldn't be surprised they won 11 games. Is this a top 3 or 4 roster in the AFC? Just on paper. We're not even, because injuries we can't predict, right? Because then pretty much everyone other Mahomes would probably miss time next year.
I like the on paper. I'll take a step further. I'll do on Madden. Because on Madden, you know when you play Madden and there's all these like old
injury
guys
simulator off.
Yeah, exactly. If
cap
the injuries off, cap space off, dude, this roster's really high. Because then suddenly teams like the Ravens, like the Jets, probably have a better offensive roster than the Ravens. If you're talking, you know, Lamar, Rodgers, but like consider, you know, if you actually have Mike Williams and a healthy Tyron Smith and it's really, really high. I don't need to tell you. The problem that the Jets have is that there's a stupid amount of like young core quarterback talent in the AFC. It's like the disparity between the AFC and the NFC is ridiculous. Frankly, I mean,
Rodgers would be like a pretty clear number one best quarterback. I don't want to get into Eagles fans, but like even Rodgers off the Achilles, he's still best quarterback probably in the conference now.
I mean, the competition is Dak, who's melted in the playoffs for 3 years in a row, or like Jared Goff, Kyler coming off, you know, who's
Brock Purdy, like what do we do?
Yeah, like it's
Daniel
kind of nuts. I mean, but if you look, you know, the AFC West, it's like you got Mahomes, you got Justin Herbert, then you got Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud. So I don't even tell you there's a lot of young talent. But in terms of this season, on paper, Jets are a top 5 defense. I don't think that's even controversial. I think that's probably too low. I think it's pretty conservative to call the Jets a top 5 defense. Certainly AFC the top 2, top 3. On offense, if all these people stay healthy, man, I mean, I'll take them over the Steelers, Bengals. I think the Browns are right there in a world where everyone's healthy, but Deshaun Watson's been so bad, I would actually put them ahead. Dude, I think they're better than the Dolphins. I would say, you know what? This is crazy to say, but I would say Chiefs. I would take the Texans. And I have to see it I have to see them beat the Bills.
Yeah, I have to see them beat the Bills in Buffalo. They own Josh Allen at home. Like, it's been a thing now, but like it's always like Zach Wilson plays his cleanest game of the year. And like Josh Allen just goes full sugar high Josh Allen. You know, shout out to Kyle for that. That's probably one of the better nicknames I think I've heard. That's actually an accurate nickname. I want to ask you 2 more things here before we wrap. Your Giants had a weird. The reason the draft night was weird, and I've obviously a lot of Giants fans, and I was just at a bachelor party with 17 of the 18 people there were Giants fans. And, oh, dude, DJ's going to be fine, or, hey, they didn't actually want a quarterback. They obviously wanted a quarterback. They offered a boatload of picks to go up and get Drake May. I don't blame them. This regime was like, hey, it kind of gives us free reign to start over. Then we don't have to owe Daniel after the season. I understand they made the playoffs with him the year before. I like Neighbors. The gun charges, obviously, it is what it is. It's not. If they're comfortable with it, then I can't really say anything. I'm just nervous from the Giants' perspective is I think they're a lot better than they were probably 12 months ago. Like, actually, the whole roster, like, they've invested a lot. There's some nice signings there. Like, all those, you know, the Illuminor signing was awesome. Like,
yeah,
a bunch of these little
Twitter
things, right?
is so pure, too. Follow Jermaine Illuminor.
Biggest head I've ever seen.
Oh, dude.
But
he's just
it's
super
insane.
grateful for everything.
Looks like mega mind. But like, look, the issue with the Giants, and this is where I'm kind of concerned is the year one Belichick guys always start out well, and then it usually starts to fade. And whatever you think of Wink and whatever actually occurred there, we don't really know for sure. Felt not great. And I'm nervous from a Giants fan's outside point of view is DJ either starts well and people buy back in and you're locked into 2 more years of him, or the opposite happens. He starts to suck and you're a Drew Lock and Bill Belichick's waiting right there. And we know the Mara's affinity with Belichick and like is Shane. Then you're ruining Shane, who I think's done a good job. Like, what do you just make of, I guess we don't have to go on a whole rant here with the Giants, but like, am I off base at all for feeling it that way? Like, I think the Giants might be a wild card team, but I also get to see them going 5-12 and Bill Belichick saying, pay me $25 million a year and I'm going to coach this team next year.
No, not only are you not off base, I think you've correctly identified all the underlying dynamics. I think that Brian Daboll, I mean, he was gassed up so much that first year. And especially in New York, the higher you rise, the more you can fall.
That was nauseating. I'm like, dude, they went 9-8. Like,
yeah,
relax.
I know. It was. They got high off their own supply, and that's frankly the entire problem with this era of the Giants. Is, for all the talk about how their Giants brought like the Bills' brain trust with them, the Bills made the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor, and then did not like fool themselves into thinking they were good enough. They overachieved, then tore the fucking thing down anyway. Sorry to curse, but like they did not extend Tyrod Taylor. They tore it down to the studs. Took Josh Allen, got worse. We're still not, and then became the Bills. But they didn't. What the difference was, the Giants fooled themselves into Daniel Jones. I will give you my basic breakdown of this whole situation. The Daniel Jones era to me is. Barbara Streisand has this weird thing where Barbara Streisand's dog passed away, and she instead of getting a new one, she cloned her old dog. They took the DNA from the dog and they cloned it, but then you get too many. So anyway, she has this like actual clone. It's really weird. Anyway, the Giants did that with Eli Manning. Dave Gettleman and the Maras, they loved Eli like a son, and then he retired, and they sent him off to a farm upstate, and they cloned him. And Daniel Jones, same height, same weight, talks like him, went to Duke to work with his coach. And now Daniel Jones has taken up that place in Eli's heart for all these poor Giants fans who like want Eli back. Daniel Jones is like this clone dog who was not raised by Archie Manning. And so he has this weird place in our heart. Giants fans are super delusional about this. So this, like, he's now kind of like this roommate girlfriend that the lease is up and they don't really want to break up with him until the lease. So what's actually going to happen, and I feel pretty good about this, Daniel Jones has no guaranteed money left unless he gets hurt, in which case his money gets guaranteed. I think that they're going to start with Daniel Jones. They're going to say all the right things. The second the season goes off the rails, they're going to bench him for Drew Lock. And just like the Broncos last year benched Russ so he can get hurt and lock in more money, the Giants, I think, are going to bench Daniel Jones midway through the year. And then Drew Lock is going to finish up the year and get a trial. And then that will, hopefully, if it creates enough hope and optimism, they'll use that to coast and ride out the storm through any potential Belichick replacement.
I think that's probably as accurate as it gets there. I am nervous for Neighbors in one sense that he's going to be really good. But, like, in one way, he couldn't have come to a better spot.
Yeah.
And also in one way, he could not have come to a worse spot. It's a bad quarterback situation. The offensive line, we're not sure yet. They should be much better, but we don't know. And he's going to be expected to be Odell from day one. And Giants fans, as I would be the same way, I don't really think about 2016 Revis. I think about 2009, 2010, 2011 Revis, that like was probably one of the two best players in the league. Odell as a rookie in year two was like as good as it gets in the league. And then it obviously went off the rails there and he got hurt. Obviously Odell is now not good. I love how Dolphins fans are convincing themselves that Odell is going to be there solving problems. He's not good. He has not been good in quite some time. But my point is, I hope he doesn't get caught in that New York top 6 pick. And then he's going to he's going to start with like 13 catches over 3 weeks. Be like, he sucks. It's like, no, he doesn't. He's going to be fine.
I think it reminds me of, I think that the short answer is that the Giants have nobody who can just create explosive plays, man. Hyatt can get open deep. Robinson's kind of jittery, but like, it's kind of like Garrett Wilson showing up. When was the last time you had fun watching a Jets player like have the ball in their hands before Garrett Wilson?
Probably
it had been years.
2015 Beadmarsh.
Yeah, it had been like a long time.
Yeah.
Quietly, dude, the Giants haven't had not Saquon, like a wide receiver that was fun to watch in like 7 years, 6 years.
That's nuts.
Since
It's kind of nuts to think about.
Since Odell broke his ankle, honestly, in like 2017.
What against the Ravens? That was that Raven. No, it wasn't. Was it against the Ravens?
In 2019. I think it was the preseason. I forget. High ankle sprains are brutal. And honestly, since Odell high ankle sprain like 5 years ago. And so
I was gonna say, what was that before that? Victor Cruz before that? And
yes,
Hakeem Nicks.
Honestly.
Hakeem Nicks.
Well, Odell stole Victor Cruz's life. No one talks about it.
And then he had a torn patella, and then it was over.
Yeah, exactly. But Victor Cruz got into the fashion, the New York life, the media. Everyone loved him. Odell kind of culture vultured Victor Cruz's life and sucked it out like a vampire and then became the most famous non-quarterback in the league. But no one talks about it. But Victor Cruz is good for
Jazz. Last question here. Obviously, people keep making all the comparisons to 94 with, Knicks Rangers and what's going on. I'm not a Knicks fan, and
why not?
I grew up a Nets fan. I got look at the J Kid jersey over here. It's bad. It's a tough scene. And like they've actually I wish they were still in Jersey because it was actually like the crowd actually was great and like people cared about them. Now it's tough. Barclays is a fun concert arena, and we've had some couple fun moments, but I'm not like hating on the Knicks. Like it's cool for the city to be good. I'm like I don't want Boston to win, so like I'm good with the Knicks like going far. Are you worried all about the Tibbs minutes? Because I think last night was the first time we saw cracks in that. And then I live on Long Island now. I kind of feel like I have to root for the Islanders. But again, the Rangers doing well is like it's fun. I want to see New York teams do well. Maybe it'll bring good juju to the Yanks and stuff like that. I feel like if you're a Knicks Rangers fan, you feel way more confident about the Rangers winning the title than the Knicks. But the Knicks are probably you're having more fun watching them just because they've been bad for a while. And like the Rangers, you're kind of expecting the shoe to drop at some point just because that's kind of happened in the playoffs. Am I off base at all as someone that's not as fully invested as maybe you are?
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think that where my brain goes with that is that it's funny how guarded I am about the actual thought of whether they'll win the title or not. I feel like I lock those parts of my brains of actually letting myself think about it. I think that you're probably right about, I don't want to jinx anyone. I'm very superstitious. But I think that the nature of hockey, the way that goaltenders can get hot, I just think that every given hockey team has such a better chance if your goalie locks in.
Yeah, we see 8-1 upsets all the time in hockey.
Exactly.
Like, it's just Boston last year. They would set the points record and they lose in round one.
And basketball is more of an oligarchy of sorts. But I will say, basketball, I do think is getting to be more like football in that basketball is a dynastic sport where you have teams win the conference year over. And in football, now it's more like football where like, you have a good quarterback, you're in it. And I do feel like there's a better distribution of talent now in the NBA. So I probably, however I'll say this. I don't like looking ahead. They still have to beat the Pacers. OG and Brunson just got hurt. The idea that like just because they're up 2-0 doesn't mean they can't lose. That's ridiculous to me. Having said that, I work for the Ringer, Bill Simmons. Like I deal with the Celtics all the time. The confidence with which, like Charles Barkley, they win the game, and then Barkley's like, "Well, the Celtics going to wash them."
That was ridiculous.
So much more mentally tough than this. I do not get the Celtics. Like the Knicks are so much more mentally tough than the Celtics, and the pucker factor of if the Knicks like stole game one, how much more like tight everyone on Boston would be. Not even close. To your point about the Tibbs thing, there's such a Tibbs life cycle. He's honestly like Kirk Cousins with edge in that there's a Kirk Cousins life cycle. If you get good, everyone's in on it. And then you're like, oh, there's a ceiling here. But like, I mean, I remember Tibbs coming, wasn't playing Alec Burks and stuff. You're like, what's going on with this? But then so there is like a little danger. However, I've been a little convinced. It's been a little weird, like freaky to watch the Knicks not sub and just have more energy than like, I can't remember anything quite like that in sports.
Especially when they're at home, like the energy levels are nuts.
Yeah, it's like Josh Hart, what is it, 304 minutes played and he sat for 15 of them or something. And it's like Hartenstein hasn't come out of the game in like 3 games. But they're all out rebounding everyone. And I mean, Josh Hart, if 13 games, 13 points, 13 rebounds, this playoffs has as many as Yao Ming had in his career. And so at some point, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let Tibbs, this whole Knicks brain trust of this, they only work with Kentucky, Calipari, CAA, Mafioso, whatever. Sure. Like, they've earned my respect. I don't know what they're going to do. It sucks that they got hurt. The Anunoby trade. they're crushing it. So I'll let them do whatever they want. It's a little nuts, but they've earned me over on the not subbing people. I
Yeah.
won them over.
I actually think the Rangers Carolina series is one that I felt really strongly that the Rangers and Carolina both dodged bullets in round one. I thought the way the Islanders were playing and knowing the amount of pressure on the Rangers winning the cup, and they got to see the Islanders round one. The Islanders 9 out of 10. They just having come off, like there was just so much that would have been in that series that would have gone 7. And you told me the Islanders won. Like the second the Islanders got Carolina, I was like, they have no shot, even though they should have probably won 3 of the 5 games they were in. But the Islanders did Islanders things in the playoffs when they don't play the Rangers, and the Rangers were able to get a matchup in Washington that, like, I know they don't play well in Washington, but they own them. And then both these games have been really close. Yeah, it is. It's the same. It's every single time. But like, man, like the Rangers have been really good. They've scored, and like I expect them to win probably in 6. But like those games have been a lot closer than people I feel like want to give it credit for. Like 4-3, 4-3, like in the Garden. Just got to be careful. Carolina's like really, really goddamn good, and they don't lose at home.
I don't want to look past anyone. I feel the same with I don't want to look past anyone. However, I will say this. Let's just entertain hypothetically. And again, being superstitious, I know, but hypothetically, if they both make the conference finals, the Rangers and the Knicks, and then James Dolan has these 2 teams in the Sphere in Las Vegas, and I just keep thinking about that Onion article that's like heartbreaking. The worst person you know just made a great point. And I'm like, heartbreaking. The worst person you know has revitalized New York sports and reimagined live entertainment. And I'm like, what a year for James Dolan. What is inexplicable.
Next to the Yankees and the Jets will win titles, and people will be Woody Johnson, Hal Steinbrenner fans again. I'm watching Juan Soto play baseball is some of them. Like watching him hit it, he's one of the most fun people. Like, I mean, I'm a diehard baseball fan. I've watched Juan Soto, and we're going to wrap after this because we've gone on for like 20 minutes longer than we were supposed to. But Soto's
like levitation.
He's literally like just watching Ted Williams hit. And I know people are going to be, like, I don't care if he's even here for a year. I mean, I'll be upset, obviously, but like, just even getting him for a year, like just in his prime at 25, and he's like locked in. And then like getting, like last night, like beating the Astros and Judge, Stanton, and Soto hitting bombs was like one of the coolest points of like the last 3 years of Yankee baseball. Like, I know it's fucking May, but it still mattered.
This is in New York. I bet there's doctors listening right now, people who can do like clinical studies. They should take an fMRI of people's brains. And in one group, you have people who are microdosing. And in the other group, people who are just watching one.
Aaron Rodgers is definitely in the microdosing category.
Rodgers, Take people who are microdosing and watch what their brains do, and then see if people who just watch Juan Soto play baseball every day, if it's basically microdose.
It's the ball at all fields, powered. It's nuts. Obviously appreciate you taking some time. I know we started off in a negative. We started off in a negative front, and then we basically said the Jets are going to win 11 or 12 games, and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are going to lead the league in yards. So I feel like we kind of did a full 360 there.
Well, that's like all these seasons we're talking about. It's not how you start; it's how you finish.
Listen, I will be back. I'll be back on the feed on the Badlands feed on Sunday. Do a special Mother's Day thing for my mom. I'm going to try to probably not cry, but I'm probably going to. Make sure you catch Danny on Twitter, and then obviously the Ringer, fantasy football show, and probably talking shit to Bill Simmons if the Knicks can figure it out here. Appreciate everybody for listening, and we'll be back on Sunday.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.